I'm with my good mate Tom Dove, and we're going to talk about a method that is relatively underused but ideal for deep water, especially in hot weather. So Dovester,
Yep.
Let's have a look at it.
Right, this is the Zig Float. What you've got here is a lead that you put on first.
Right, let's get that out of here. So now explain firstly why you'd use this instead of a standard Zig rig that's tied to a standard lead setup.
Simply when the water's too deep, because you can't cast an 18-foot Zig rig out there, can you? And when you do, you don't know if it's tangled or anything like that.
And it's a bugger to play fish on as well.
It is, yeah, because you can't reel your swivel back through your eyes and everything like that. So.
Okay, so with this, completely different, allows you to fish into that sort of depth of water.
Yep.
Right, explain to me how it works and how you tie it up.
Right, okay, basically when you cast out, it works exactly like a mark float. You'd cast out, fill it down, well you don't fill it down, and then you'd put the line out so the float comes up and you've got your Zig on the other end. But first of all, you put the lead on,
all right,
then a bead to butt up against the float.
So we've got a little distance lead out. Is the weight of lead important?
I just changed the lead to the size of the float. So if I need to cast a really long way, I'll put a bigger lead on and a bigger float.
Right.
But if you're not casting out that far, then you can use a little lead and a little float.
Okay,
Yeah.
So what's that, like 2.5 or something?
That's a 2. That's
all right.
2 ounce lead, and it's just a small little float. They're the smallest one they do.
So 4mm bead, small little sub float.
Yep.
And then I take it you've got another 4mm bead, and then what knot do you use to that swivel?
A grinner. I'd still always use a grinner or Palomar. They're the best 2 knots you can use.
Right, okay, I can see you've got a ring swivel on there. Is that an important element to the rig?
Yeah, it just stops tangles.
Right.
You will get tangles with it. It is a bit of a nightmare rig for tangles, but the more you use it, the more you get used to how you've got to cast it out, how you've got to let it up, and then eventually you just sort of eradicate the tangles at all.
All right, more on the casting later. Moving down the rig now, so we've got the lead system, which is very, very simple, we have to add. Can't get simpler than that, mate.
Well, no, it's 7-pound mono, size 10 wide gape, and a little bit of foam on here.
So a little bit of yellow foam.
Yeah.
What's that, just knotless knot?
Yeah, just not, it's not exactly the same as your hair rig.
Okay, you just touched there on the casting element, but before you do that, do you normally use any foam?
Yes, every single time. Either a couple of bits of foam, if you put one that side,
Yep.
lick the other one like that, and stick them like that.
Okay.
I've used that, or I put 4 or 5 bits of foam in a bag and clip the bag onto the hook, and that eradicates tangles as well.
Now, so that is completely as a tangle-proof method, is that right?
It is, yeah.
All right, now you touched on the casting. What is the method to do it? What's the correct way to cast?
Right, like you would with your floater setup, cast out and just stop it before it hits the surface so it doesn't all bomb in once.
Okay, so it springs the hook link away from the float.
Yeah, and then when you generally would fill the lead down, like keep the line tight all the way down to the bottom, you wouldn't do it. So you stop it before it hits the surface, then let it all go slack, so then the float can pull away from the lead, and it'll be on the surface nearly. The lead will hit the bottom, and then you're on the surface.
So when you've got that, let me just untangle this. When it's out in the water, so what you're saying is you cast it out, that sinks.
You'd have the lead up against there like that.
Yep. So that plummets through into the depths.
But where you let slack, when it sinks down, that will pull up like that.
Got ya.
Away from the lead.
So what you should end up with on the surface is that float there.
Yep.
And the hook bait on the surface.
Yep.
And then what do you do after that?
One thing is, as long as you know how long your hook link is,
Yep.
even if you're fishing too far out and you can't particularly see your hook bait,
Yep.
you know that as soon as that bob's underneath the surface, you've then got, well, I know that's 3.5 foot,
Yep.
you've then got 3.5 foot to pull in until that is just bobbing underneath the surface.
Okay. Right, so you get those two things on the surface.
Yep.
What do you do next?
Put your rod on your rest,
Yep.
tighten down to it until you just see the float bob.
Okay.
So then you know your line's tight all the way down to the lead, all the way up to the float, and then you've got your slack hook link on the surface.
Yeah, got ya.
And then I'd slowly pull a foot under, 1, 2, 3.5, and then I know that is tight to that underneath the surface.
So on the surface, that should slide, shouldn't it? And
Yeah,
then that'll be going under.
It will do, and then you'll see that just bob underneath the surface.
And then after that, I take it you take a foot at a time, is that right?
A foot at a time, yeah. I'll always, if I think say I'm fishing in 23 foot of water, 24 foot of water, and I think the fish are at 17, then I'll pull it down 8 or 9 foot, so I know I'm not above them first.
Yep.
So then I'll let a foot off until I get a bite, hopefully. Okay. And then you know what depth they're at, and then you can just do the same every single time.
So that's the beauty of it, because one thing people forget is that fish don't stay at the same depth all day or for a whole long session, do they?
No, certainly not, no.
So one day they might be, say, 12 foot in 20 foot of water, the next day they might be at 18 foot in 20 foot of water.
Exactly, yeah, and the other good thing about it is that you don't have to keep recasting, you don't need to reel in, change your hook link, whack another one back out. It's all disturbance, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
all you need to do is reel a foot down and you're fishing a different rig.
Well, that is excellent advice. An underused method, but a brilliant method. Ignore it at your peril.